What is up, everybody? Welcome to my very first video. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to make a new character in the Elder Scrolls Online in 2020. Let's go ahead and get started. So after loading in for the first time or for the 100th time, you'll have the opportunity to make a new character. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the races, and then I'll give you some resources to use to help determine exactly what character you want to build. You don't have to make the perfect character the first time. All that matters is that you enjoy playing, but if you want to make as good of a first character as you can, definitely check out the resources that I'll discuss here in a second. So, races. Now, you're going to have 9 races to choose from, 10 if you have the Imperial DLC that allows for the Imperial race. Unless you have the Any Race, Any Alliance unlocked already, each of the races will be Alliance locked until you receive an Alliance change token. With that said, there are 3 alliances. You have the Daggerfall Covenant, the Ebonheart Pact, and the Aldmeri Dominion. Within each of those alliances, there are 3 races to choose from. In the Aldmeri Dominion, you're going to have the High Elves, the Wood Elves, and the Khajiit. For the Ebonheart Pact, you're going to have the Dark Elves, the Nords, and the Argonians. And finally, we have the Daggerfall Covenant, which is the Bretons, the Red Guards, and the Orcs. Now, each of these races has a specialty, magicka, or stamina, and some of the really great magicka races are going to be High Elves, Argonians, Dark Elves, and Bretons. For good stamina classes, we're going to be looking at Red Guards, Orcs, Nords, Wood Elves, Khajiit, Imperials, and Dark Elves. Each of these races will do better at player versus environment or player versus player, and it really depends on the situation. For your first character, I would really recommend making a character for the player versus environment, or PvE, as you learn the game. Now, I know the question you're probably thinking, how do I even make a PvE build, or even know what sort of a build that I'm making? Now I'm going to show you those resources that I use. The 3 sites that I use the most when looking at builds for Elder Scrolls Online are going to be Alcast HQ, Dots Gaming, and Zynode Gaming. Each of these sites has a wealth of knowledge on both PvE and PvP builds. You can kind of just peruse and look through the different classes that are offered under each of those builds, and you can kind of toy around with each of the 3 sites, see which ones you like best. Some of them are going to be much better for what you're looking for, so just take some time, look through those sites, find a build you like, and then get after it. So after doing some looking on those sites, I decided on an Alcast Stamina Dragon Knight build, specifically a Nord Stamina Dragon Knight. And I'm going to be building this character for PvP. Now, what exactly is a Dragon Knight? A Dragon Knight is one of the class options for the Elder Scrolls. As of right now, there are 6 different class options. 4 of them are base game, and 2 of them come with the extra chapters, or DLCs, that you can play as well. The classes are going to differ pretty drastically as far as skills and playstyles. However, you can really choose any of these classes and play as either a stamina or a magicka-based character. It really depends on what you're looking for. Those 6 classes that you can choose from are going to be the Dragon Knight, the Sorcerer, the Nightblade, the Templar, the Warden, and the Necromancer. The Warden and the Necromancer are the ones that are going to be locked behind the chapters or the DLCs that you'll have to get in order to be able to play those classes. I recommend reading up on each of the different classes before making your final decision. Once you've made that final decision, next you get to do the fun stuff, actually building your character. So none of this is going to have any effect on the way your character plays, but it is going to be how your character looks. As you go through and make your character, I highly recommend locking the values. Just in case you make a mistake, hit randomize, hit that button. On the PS4, it's the R3 button, clicking on the joystick. However, it's going to be different for each of the different systems. You can kind of mess around with how your character looks, its size, and then you can actually start getting into the nitty-gritty of hairstyles, face shape, chin size, nose size, pretty much anything you want to do. You can change your character's height, skin color, tattoos, sizes of all the different body parts. It really is up to you. I don't really need to get any deeper than that. It's really just character creation, and it's really up to you. It's pretty self-explanatory. Just make sure you go through all the options and make a character you like. After I've finished working on his looks, I like to come up with a name that matches. So in just a second, after I have finished this character, picking the voice, picking everything else, I'm going to go to the name screen. And I really like to use lore-friendly names. You can really pick whatever names you want, but I like to use this fantasy name generator. I'll link it in the description. But essentially what it is it gives you a name generator, Elder Scrolls family, for each of the races. I think it's really good if you can't come up with a name for yourself, or if you like to take a first name and a last name and kind of put it together. Me personally, for this one, I actually did some translating, and I was able to find a name that I liked based on some Swedish names. So that is what I used for this character, but definitely use this as a resource if this is the way that you want to go. Granted, tons of people make super creative names for their characters. See very, very creative Argonian names, but it's really up to you. So after creating your character, you have the option to play the tutorial, and I'm going to go ahead and do that here so I have some time to explain some of these beginner concepts to you. I really recommend playing through the tutorial if it's your first time, or if you never took the time to learn all of the basic beginner concepts. You saw me just a second ago adjusting the camera. That's one of the first things I really like to do with a new character, is adjust the camera to how I want to play. You kind of go through this tutorial. It teaches you some of the basics. You're going to grab a sword, and this trainer is going to teach you how to fight. We're going to teach you the very basics of light attacks, heavy attacks, and even blocking. And I recommend you going through the steps here. Definitely take your time and pick up everything in the urns and sacks. It's a really, really nice way to get some goodies really early on. Once you start fighting your way through the rest of the tutorial here in a moment, you're actually going to get the opportunity to pick up lots of armor, weapons, and the like, which is really good. Just now we've leveled up. I'm going to show you what that looks like. Each time you level up, you're going to get rewards, attribute points, and skill points. These points are going to be spent either on your individual attributes of magic, health, and stamina, or your skill points are going to be spent on your individual skills, either active or passive skills. As you start to spend those skill points, I really recommend keeping one of each of your class skill lines on the bars that you're using, as well as one skill from each of the weapon types that you plan to use. Notice here, I'm picking a skill from one of my skill lines with that first skill point that I earned. I pick Lava Whip here, but really it's up to you to determine what first skill you want to unlock. The next thing I like to do after spending those skill points in this tutorial is to actually adjust some of my settings. So that's actually what I'm going to do here. I'm going to run up there after the dragon attack, and I'm going to pause for a second, and I'm going to adjust my settings. So I'll go down to my options, and I'm going to go ahead and select combat. I'm going to turn the ability bar on to always show, the attribute bars to always show, turn my resources on to number and percent, personal preference, and I'm going to turn my ultimate number on. You're also going to want to find debuffs, buffs and debuffs, and turn that on as well. The next thing that I like to do is I like to actually turn on custom colors for enemy attacks. This is really, really crucial because it helps you see the enemy attacks coming. Instead of the red that can be confused with other things, I like to turn it to a bright purple or a bright pink. It's really your own preference, but to me this is the easiest color to see, and so that's the color I go with. Although this is specifically for elsewhere, this is going to be really good for you no matter when you start the game. So as I go into this first building, we're going to find very early on a stack of weapons. At least here and elsewhere, we're able to get pretty much any skill line started right here, right now, except for restoration. And this is going to be really great because we'll be able to have a jump on whatever skill line we're going to want to start leveling up now. Because of that, I'm going to go ahead and equip my sword and board right here, right now. But as you're leveling up, like I said before, make sure you have one of each weapon on your bar so you can start leveling them both up. So that means that at some point, you're going to have to switch and use a different weapon. So for me, I'm going to use sword and board, and then I'm actually going to switch my weapons at some point to start using two-handed, and that way I can level up both at the same time. And now that we've got all that set up, I'm just going to kind of breeze right through the rest of the tutorial here, fighting all of the baddies, leveling up my skills, and eventually we're going to get all the way to the end. Some of the things that I recommend looking into are things like attack weaving, so learning how to get those light attacks or even shield bashes in between your skill uses. It's really going to be able to up your DPS depending on what character you're playing as. But as we kind of work through here, learn your play style, learn how you're going to use it against enemies. Here I'm doing a lot of bash weaving, so I'm using my lava whip into a bash. And after learning how to do all that, we're going to use this against the final boss of the tutorial, which is the dragon for Elsewhere. This is going to be sort of a test and sustain. Yes, the dragon has a lot of health. Yes, it looks like it's going to be really hard to take down, but it actually flies away during the tutorial, so it's nothing to worry about. The big thing here is just make sure you're doing damage to the boss. Obviously, I'm learning the playstyle here, so I'm doing a lot of kind of pausing between skills, pausing between attacks, but use this as a time to sort of learn that skill that you've unlocked, learn how to block, learn how to bash, all of the other fun things that come with the tutorial. Once you've finished up this part, beat the dragon, escaped the adaptorium, they're going to send you on your merry way, and you're going to get right out into the world. For this tutorial, they're going to kick you out into Northern Elsewhere. After I load through, I go ahead and choose my mount, but you may not have any mounts unlocked at this point. So you're going to make your way to that nearest way shrine. Maybe fast, maybe slow. You don't have to go immediately, but eventually make your way to that first way shrine. Once you're at that way shrine, it'll bring up the map, and you'll have the opportunity to fast travel to a few locations that have already been discovered. As you sort of move around the map, you'll notice that some locations already have way shrines discovered. These will usually be the DLC locations, as well as the starting locations and the major cities for the different factions. Now, for this one, I'm going to go ahead and travel back to Rimmon, which is the biggest city here in Northern Elsewhere, and from there, I'm going to go and do some of the things that I like to do when I first start out on a new character. For this build, I did the smart thing and put some gold in the bank for me to take out, and then I went straight to the stable. And I'm going to tell you a little bit why the very first thing I do is go to the stable. If this is your first playthrough, you may not have unlocked a horse yet or other mount. However, as you level up, you will eventually unlock a mount. Once you unlock that mount, come to this riding trainer at a stable in any major city indicated by the horse head and train your mount speed. Depending on if you're playing as a PvP character or PvE character, once you hit 60 speed, which is the max speed, you can then start putting things into the other ones. This isn't a requirement, just a recommendation. I like to do speed all the way up first, and then for my PvP characters, stamina, and my PvE characters, carry capacity. Stamina allows you to be hit more often before falling off your horse. Carry capacity allows your character to carry more items in their bag. And finally, the last thing I like to do after making a new character is starting both the Mages Guild and Fighters Guild quest lines, which allows you to level those guild skill lines up as you encounter things that will level them up. For Fighters Guild, killing Daedra, undead, and werewolves will give you increased skill, and for the Mages Guild, it's finding lore books. By starting these quest lines now, it allows you to take advantage of every single skill XP that you can as early as you can in your new character. For the Fighters Guild, you're going to want to find the Hall Steward, and for the Mages Guild, you're going to want to find the Magister. These are going to be the people that will start your individual skill lines for you. Thank you so much for joining me for my first video. I really hope that these tips and tricks help you start your new character. If you liked this video, go ahead and throw me a like below. Go ahead and tell me if this inspired you to make a new build below in the comments, and go ahead and throw me a subscribe if you want to continue seeing videos like this. I really hope to see you in the future, and we'll see you out there.